Okay, Ganeev, you can start.
Done.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ganeev, and I'm currently working as a curator with the Partition Museum, which is located in Amritsar in Punjab. My interests and research focus on the history of Punjab. I will be moderating the session on archiving protests today. In late November 2020, farmers arrived at Delhi's borders from far and wide to resist new laws that would ensure corporate control over agriculture. The panel today will explore how diverse voices involved in the protests are being documented through on-the-ground reportage and the process of creating a digital archive of the farmers' movement, taking a longer historical time frame into view. Let me introduce our first panelist today. Yogesh Snehi is an assistant professor with the School of Liberal Studies at Ambedkar University, Delhi. His research focuses on popular culture, the role of popular Sufi shrines, and the formation of regional identities. He has published extensively on these subjects, including a book spatializing popular Sufi shrines in Punjab. Today, he will be speaking on his efforts to archive the farmers' movement. Handing the screen to Professor Snehi.
Thank you very much, Ganeev. It's an honor to be here to be sharing some of these ideas, which are not directly, obviously, my core research is not necessarily, doesn't necessarily go around the notion of the archive, but as historians, I've been thinking, working, dealing, and also engaging with archiving in one or other way. Now, what I'll be focusing on today is a kind of ongoing project on the farmers' movement. All of us are familiar with the farmers' movement, which started during the pandemic period. Though, however, this is not necessarily the beginning point of the farmers' movement. Farmers' movement actually originated in around Punjab for quite some time earlier, and thereafter Delhi becomes the center of the movement. Now, I don't want to get into the details of it because I just have 15 minutes. And Ganeev, please remind me when my time is at 13. So in 2 minutes, therefore,
sure,
I can wind up my session. Right now, this landscape of present movements. So you see, this archive is called Farmers Movement Archive, and it began as a spontaneous process, actually, with me and some of my friends who coined this idea of thinking about the moment that we were in, a significant moment, as most of us know, within the historical discourse of Indian history, and also the history of the present movements. Now, we too, as scholars, are too familiar, used to using present as a category of understanding movements, present movements in India, farmers' movements in India. And this has been an important academic category for a very long period of time. Now, am I audible?
Yeah. Oh, again, it's muted again.
Actually, someone is muting me. I'm getting unmuted. I'm unmuting myself, but I'm automatically getting muted. Okay, fine. Now, one of the important, therefore, foundational questions was whether to use present as a category, or there is some other category that we can think of. The present as a category also has an implication on the question of class, whether or not you think of present for farmers as class entity, or there is something more complex about the movement, its composition, both social, political, and otherwise. So, and therefore, these questions about whether caste can also be an important contour within the movement force us to think of this movement not necessarily in the class-centric term like peasant, but also a far more broader term like Kisan or farmers. So this is therefore the emergence of this term as a category instead of the peasant emerged out of this background of looking at this particular movement in a far more complex lens. Now, we were also into we also wanted to think about how this varied kind of manifestation of movement through the lens of caste, for instance, can also capture a more complex and a nuanced narrative of what we were encountering. Now, let me give quickly an example of it. Historically, at least until the beginning of the militancy movement, or what we also popularly call the Khalistani movement, in the late 70s, the movements that were associated with peasants, we had long run peasant movement, the history of long run peasant movement from the early 20th century. But during that particular juncture, we see the rise of what we also know as the Naxalite movement. Now, this has been called variedly interpreted by scholars as peasant militancy. And, it so easily transits into the what we know as the militancy movement or the Khalistani movement. So therefore, once again, this dynamic of how do you actually understand peasant as a category? How do you understand farmer or kisan as a category? And whether or not, therefore, these analytic of kisan and farmer can provide a better lens to imagination of our archive, or for some of the preliminary questions that were being explored academically. So just now, so going beyond the question of class, therefore, attention which previously has not been paid to much attempts to understanding movement were to religion, say for instance, category of religion. So whether a religion as a category can also be understood in a way in which idioms and expressions of the present movement were being underlined, therefore. And langar became such an important component of all the sites of the present protest, even around Delhi. And similarly, ceremonies of Pog for the peasants who had died during the protest movement. So there seems to be also a very important fundamental religious component also, or organizing yagna by Arya Samaji, some Arya Samaji groups here and there also, particularly at sites in Haryana. So what do you do of these religious component of the peasant movement? What some of the core questions that we wanted to underline? Now, while it began as a movement based in Punjab, one of the biggest challenges that we experience in terms of imagining it were of how basically terms and categories of archiving could then be coined to think and imagine a very large archive encompassing the Indian subcontinent now. Now, once it reaches Delhi, we know the protest site had started emerging in different parts of India, Haryana, Western UP and Punjab being the major centers, but we know of Rajasthan and several other states of both North India as well as southern states had coming up with present protest sites in Maharashtra and elsewhere. So thinking about such a large phenomena and then to imagine it in the form of archive, therefore, looked like a very daunting task. So initial questions were, and these were just preliminary questions when we didn't have any imagination of what do we do, from where do we go from here, were about what would be the nature of the archive, what will archive contain? Obviously, we are much aware of printed posters, news bulletins, magazines, and pamphlets, which have been part of attempts to archive present movements. And there are very few, once again. You don't hear of many attempts to archive the present movements in India. And therefore, we were very, very conscious of how is it that we can try to imagine this in a much more broad framework. And therefore, the newer kind of social media networks, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, blogs, and other came in as an important entry point, but also as challenging points for our imagination, because then we are thinking of a very large plethora of movement-based material, which needs to be archived, which needs to be, for which metadata had to be created, and therefore a much more better nuance for imagining this needs to be thought through. Also, besides mainstream media, a lot of actually critical component, critical insight was coming from private and individual initiatives, which are small newspaper portals, small pamphlets, or also blogs, small newspaper, some actually union-based publications. So, so beside national newspapers, which we were very familiar with, beside TV reportage as well as print media, of national significance. We were also thinking of paying attention to some of the lesser known media, both which would be in existence on YouTube channels. And large number of such YouTube channels now exist on all across the web, which were predominantly focusing on the present movements. So therefore, it was critical to understand whose voice are we recording. We know that one set of responsibility of is what thinking of the report page, but the other set of responsibility what to think of the present, the present and their voice. So in those voices, whether or not class as a category of the present would be in existence, but also caste as a category within the present would be heard, would be voiced and represented, and also gender is an important category. So they were actually therefore, because this was a movement which continued for a very long period of time, still continuing, there were these fascinating possibilities of thinking about some of these complex questions and building them into the imagination of the archive. So even before the archive was coming to shape, some of these foundational questions were already there among the groups who were envisioning these archives. Some of the current work which is being done actually with Radhika will be sharing with us by IIIT Hyderabad, by the usage of data analytics, ease some of the burdens of thinking about the mainstream media, which means mainstream newspapers, mainstream Twitter handles, mainstream print editions. So by data scraping and indexing, IIIT Hyderabad is doing some wonderful work, and Radhika will be sharing with us. But there is actually a significant work which still needs to be done. So it's a work in progress, therefore. And our future attempt, therefore, would be to think of connecting through digital collections with digital collections of All India Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committees, for instance. What is it that they have produced in the form of press releases, in the form of video recording, in the form of interviews, press conferences? So thinking about that also and how it can be embedded into the archive, because this will remain for the life of the internet. So we are thinking of it a very long drawn process. We're thinking of something which lives as memory of the present movement. And in some way also which is auto indexed, at least for the content which is being produced on the national or from the websites which are indexed. So auto indexing as an important component was also thought through. We thought of also paying attention, and actually active attention which has been paid to pamphlet, poster, newspaper, insignia, photographs, stickers, banners, because now we are thinking about movement to a very different vantage point, movement which are consciously thinking of these smaller things never used to be part of the present movement earlier. So the usage of color, speechy spoofs, and everyday life like bathing, cooking, dressing, sleeping, these have been represented actually. If you see several attempts which have been done on production of newspapers are paying very small, interesting attention to some of these dimensions. Photographers, filmmakers are paying interesting attention to this dimension of the site, and therefore bringing them into the content of the archive will be very crucial. Cartoons, caricatures, drawings, wall murals, therefore sketches, langar, and other reports which have been produced both independently or otherwise will become an important part of the archival process. Besides that, thinking of objects. So I'm just trying to visualize how farmer movement archive might become a space where not just the movement becomes movement through official reporting, through government reporting or other kind of representation, which are quite a classic archive. And that's actually, when you historians look at an archive, that's how an archive is defined. But to also look for creating a space for objects, say for instance. Now these objects would be tent, geyser, washing machine, rajai, tractor, trolley, jeep, munch, mic, salwar kameez, all of these kind of objects, lungi, kirpan, pag, topi, roti, tawa, anitha, water tank, gamcha, parali, chona, pani, bijli, kanak, combined, tool, hookah. So you see, there are a lot of objects which also occupy the site, and then the thinking of the way in which an archive can incorporate these visuals. Because the bigger challenge would be when you think of an image, say for instance, that image may contain, say for instance, a farmer giving a speech to a news reporter. But in that particular interview, there will be all kinds of other things which will be part of the farmer's demeanor, which means he might be holding a hookah, which would mean that he might be wearing a particular kind of clothing. You see very little attention sometimes is paid to some of these the visual dimensions are also of the interview. So therefore, how do you think of metadata? How do you think of creation of metadata? Yes, Ganeev? Do I have to wind up? I can't hear you, Ganeev.
Sorry, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, great. And therefore also to bring in the oral archives and the oral component, interviewing leaders, and these are all future possibilities of how the archive can become a vibrant space in its dimension of imagination. And also to encapsulate present in its variety, and not just present as a singular category, but present as a vibrant category, to think of present as Kisan, Mazdoor, Jat, Jat, Rajput, Gujar, Mio, Kambo, Mazhabi, Siri, Artiya, Bania, rural, all these connected networks, because Artiya cannot be looked outside of the movement, as Artiya is as much part of the movement. So thinking of urban, rural, Sikh, Hindu, Muslim, Kirtaniya, Ragi, Neta, Sant, Akali, so in terms of also these large range of categories, how do you think of metadata? How do you think of imagining a metadata where children are part of it, where the diaspora is part of it, where slogans of the Khalistani are part of it, where Nai is part of it, where Comrade is part of it, where a Marxist, Maoist, Pradhan, Sekattar, all are part of it. It seems like a complex network of what a space encapsulates. And therefore, these challenges of thinking of a vibrant metadata collection, wherein these tags, wherein these compilation can go in, is something that perhaps is far more fascinating and thinking of. And similarly, strategies, how are these strategies being think of? The site in itself is not just a singular site. These are multiple sites, not just in sense of multiple spaces on which they exist. One site also occupies multiple stages, and we know it very well. So what is this asthan, which is this place of fasting? Where is this? Where are these different dharnas or tarnas? Thinking of rail roko, because once again, these are some of the strategies of which peasants had utilized within the contours of Punjab and elsewhere. Thinking of hartal, strike. Kirtan also actually has emerged as an important strategy of peasant mobilization, and so has part, langar, pashan, with speeches, sabha, ragini sabhas also. So peasant strategy, therefore, paying attention to these kind of dimensions also become some of the crucial questions. One of the largest projects, and I'm concluding here, Ganeev, one of the larger projects of this archive is not just to exist in independence, but also thinking of the ways in which we can make it sustainable, which means the archive will move beyond the narrow space, which, and the internet is a very peculiar space of thinking also if it of a space which doesn't die in cloud or on a server spaces, because we, to begin with, have started with server space based in IIIT, but we also want to mirror these servers on the internet archive. So the auto archiving the internet archive and connecting them with these larger processes of archive movement in the global context is also something that we are thinking of. And therefore, how within the narrow imagination to begin with, it looks like a movement centered in Punjab, Haryana, and Western UP. The possibilities of thinking it beyond these terrains of these three important states will be something that the farmer movement archive will think of, and cater to the social movements, will cater to scholarship, artists, students, and a large community of interested individuals. I'll stop here. Thank you very, very much, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Yogesh. I'll now introduce our second panelist, and we'll take questions after that. Our second panelist is Radhika Krishnan, who is an assistant professor with the Human Sciences Research Group at the International Institute of Information Technology at Hyderabad. She studies the interface between technological regimes, communities, and local ecologies, including social movements of the 1970s and 1980s in India. She is currently working on a book on the trade unionist Shankar Guha Niyogi. Handing over to you, Radhika.
Uh, Thank you, and thank you, Yogesh, for setting the stage so nicely for what I have to say. So I'd like to sort of begin with where Yogesh ended. Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt, but Yogesh, could you end your share screen?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Priyanka. Yeah. So I think I have 15 minutes, and Ganeev, please do tell me if I'm overshooting my time. Just give me a buzz at 13 minutes again.
Okay, sure.
So what I'll try to do in these 15 minutes is to just quickly take you through the work that we have been doing with our students primarily over the past few months. So Yogesh got in touch with us a couple of months back and talked about this idea of building a digital archive of the farmers' movement, and uh, we were very excited by the idea, also because uh, Professor Aniket Alam, who's also very much a part of the project, and myself have been working with IIIT students over the years on some aspect or the other of the social, right? So we have been trying to work with this confluence, this idea of confluence, bringing together data analytics into the social sciences. So we thought this would be a great way of taking our ideas of confluence forward. And so we began working. Prinka, can we have the next slide, please? So I just thought I'll begin with a quick overview of why the digital archive of, of a moment that's obviously very important to all of us in India right now, as Yogesh currently pointed out. So, of course, there is this growing trend towards digitization and the use of computational tools. And we have very interesting data sets getting created. And I just saw the last bit of the previous session, and you get an idea of the kind of different data sets that are in the process of getting created now. What the digital archive does, what the use of computational tools gives for us, is the ability to create to bring new kinds of data onto into the world of social analysis. So what's happening on social media, what's happening on Facebook, on Twitter.
Radhika, you seem to have muted yourself.
Somebody muted me. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I automatically got muted. It's okay. Yeah. So so it's in this broader context where there is this push, whether you like it or not, towards digitization. That's there in the background. So I just wanted to flag that before we talked about our specific archive. Now, why are we creating a digital archive? Of course, there is a well-recognized paucity of documentation. All of us here, researchers in India, know that all too well. I don't need to belabor that point. But what we're trying to do is to actually tap into the potential of big data analytics and the potential of it, while understanding the limitations that big data has inherent in it in terms of its capacity to analyze and to look at the social world around it. So, but big data analytics is a big, a space that's available for us, and it's something that we will probably need to use at some point or the other. So that's there. But we at IIIT, and I must acknowledge Aniket for this idea that he gave to all of us when we were talking about the potential of a digital archive at some point. He talked about the need to sort of reverse the gaze in a sense. So we are used to thinking about data collection, digital data collection, as this one-way street where we generate data, and somebody, whether it's the state or whether it's influential corporations, who mine that data and who utilize it and then sort of use it to manipulate our lives and to understand our social life, to know ourselves better than probably we do. So the idea was to think about the possibility of actually reversing this gaze. So I like to use this word. We've all been used to this whole concept of digital divide, and in my opinion, we actually need to rephrase that word and to use something else in its place. So think of it as the computational divide, where there is a huge skew actually in the capacity to process that massive amounts of data, humongous amounts of data that is being collected every single second, automatically being collected by the state, by corporations, and so on. So how do you address that skew? How do you allow and empower uh, people, ordinary people who are generating this data all the time, to actually make sense of the larger world in which this data is being processed? So, the idea of creating a digital archive, at least for us in IIIT Hyderabad, was not just releasing data, collecting it and releasing data. Public data, of course, but also releasing preliminary analysis of the information into the public domain so that people get a sense of what is happening in the digital world. So what is Twitter saying? What is happening in Twitter around the farmers movement? How are papers reporting the farmers movement? What is happening in the digital world? So it is a sort of a dual process where we are also trying to release public data and also release preliminary analysis of this data, uh, in order to kind of, in our own very small way, reverse the case. Can we move to the next slide, please, Priyanka? So let me just now come to the nuts and bolts of what we did with the digital archive, what we're doing. As Yogesh pointed out, and I'd like to underline this, it is a work in progress, very much a work in progress. It's just, let's call it, in the beginning of its, of its entire form and so on. So we are collecting all forms of born digital data, that is data that primarily exists in the digital world. So and what we are trying to do is automating collection of various kinds of born digital data. So automated collection of tweets based on selected hashtags, automated collection of newspaper articles based on selected keywords, automated collection of Instagram posts, of YouTube videos on a specific topic, in this case, the farmers' movement, automated collection of Facebook posts. We haven't really gotten there, and the reason is obvious. We're fairly clear about what we are trying to do here, and what we're trying to do is basically put out there anything that is publicly available and that is online. So only publicly available information. uh, we do not want to get into, of course, the very real problems of the very real questions of privacy and surveillance and so on and so forth, which is why Facebook remains a little bit of a gray area for us. We have not yet gotten into crawling any Facebook posts, because we want to be sure that we are only collecting information that is publicly available, where the person who is posting whatever, whether it's a photograph or an Insta post or a newspaper article or whatever, is very well aware that it is available for everyone, anyone and everyone. So, but everything other than Facebook, we have started collecting. They're in various stages. I'll give you a sense of where we have reached in each of these, but we are collecting tweets, we are collecting newspaper articles, Insta posts, YouTube videos, and so on. It's a work in progress, and the team is pretty small. So apart from Aniket Alam, who I just mentioned before, a historian, and myself, we have 3 students who are actually the spine of this whole process. They are the ones who are doing the data collection. They are the ones who have built the website, which I'll be showing you in a while. So there's Anchita Khandelwal, there's Ruja Reddy, and Shravya Gurum. Anchita has primarily been involved in in collecting of the tweets and in collecting of the newspaper articles. Srujay has helped us build the platform, that is the site that I'll be showing you in a while. And Shravya has been helping a lot in solving the problems that have arisen at various times. So this small team essentially has done whatever you will see in front of you right now. Can we go to the next slide, please, Priyanka? Thank you. This is the first page, the front page. I've just put for you the, I've kept the link in case any of you is interested, indiasocialarchive.triplight.ac.in /s/fma/page/home. So this is the home page. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, thank you. This is the bottom part of the front page again, and you will of the home page, and you will see that there are thumbnails to important sets of data that we hope to collect. We're in the process of collecting and we hope to collect. Now, Yogesh had mentioned, remember, that we are hoping to also collect audio sources, so interviews, songs, anything that the movement generates. So we have a section for that, interviews and videos and audio recordings. We have a section for pamphlets and posters. We have a section for memes and comic strips. We have a section for blogs and so on and so forth. So I'll give you a sense of what the archive looks like. Can we go to the next one, please, Priyanka? Yeah. So this is in fact the photo page. Okay, so you'll find the photographs with a basic sort of caption at the bottom of it. Can we go to the next one, Priyanka, please? Yeah. So this is where what Yogesh gave you a sense of, and what we are doing sort of come together. This archive can work only if people are able to contribute to it, right? So people anywhere and everywhere should be able to post things here, and we will then here upload it and so on. So we have this option of anybody contributing an item, and you have basically, the contributor has to give some basic information which the contributor wants in the public domain. So title, a description of what is happening, and so on and so forth, the date, and all basic information that you need for archival purposes will be provided by the contributor. Can we go to the next one, please, Priyanka? Yeah, so this is, for example, one photograph, and this is how it appears. And if you zoom in, you'll find all the information that, all the metadata, in a sense, that is at the bottom of it. So there is a title, there's a description, there's the creator, the date of creation, the source, where it was covered, which language, who is the contributor, and so on and so forth. So all information is sort of cataloged in here. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, and this is the item sets tree, the various kinds of data. So there's a link to the blogs, to government press releases, to guest uploads, to interviews, memes and comic strips, newspaper articles, by divided month-wise. We have done only 2 newspapers till now, which is the Hindu and the Tribune, and we have covered various editions of the Tribune, as you can see here: Amritsar, Bhatinda, Chandigarh, Delhi, Jalandhar, Ludhiana, Patiala, and so on. So these articles have been automatically collected. I will show you the keywords on which the search has been done. Can we go to the next slide, please? It's the sort of bottom half of this page. Yes, so we also have the soft copies of the Trolley Times uploaded here. We have soft copies of pamphlets and posters as and when we get them here. Facebook, as I said, Facebook is just a dummy here. We haven't really collected any Facebook posts. We had to figure out how to do that. And then, of course, Instagram. So a couple of IDs who have been posting very nice photographs of the movement. We have picked up photographs from them and featured them here. And of course, Twitter. So we have also organized Twitter month-wise. So every month we upload new tweets. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So we have basically used Omeka to create this website that you see, and I don't think I have much time, so let me rush through this. In case there are questions, we can of course come. I can answer those questions when we have the time.
We have about 4 minutes, Radhika.
Yeah, I know. That's why I will just rush through this. So we chose OMECA because it follows the three basic rules of digital archiving. It's flexible, it's scalable, it's interoperable, and it is proprietary free. It is based on open source technologies. So it's that was one of the big reasons why we went for OMECA, apart from, of course, the technical reasons. And OMECA allows you to also create data and to add data, and it gives you can each contributor, in a sense, there are various, let's call it roles that you play that are allowed. And if time permits, if some questions arise, I'll tell you what each of those roles mean. But let's go to the next slide so that I can finish up. Priyanka, yeah. So the tools used. The code was written in Python, and Anshita, in this case, created web scrapers to scrape articles from newspaper, websites, and Twitter. Uh, and keywords were used. I'll come to those keywords. Two newspapers till now. So we have collected approximately 1,000 articles from the Hindu, and nearly 6,000 articles from the Tribune, and a little over 10 lakh tweets on Twitter. Can we go to the next one? This is very much an ongoing process. These are the hashtags that we used to collect the tweets. As you can see, and I noticed that a question had come up, actually a comment had come up on the chat box as Yogesh was speaking. So we tried to collect hashtags that are both favoring the farmers movement and those who were not in favor of the farmers movement. So there's also Valentine's with farmers, there is Mahapanchayat revolution, there is you know I'm trying to find farmers with Modi. So these are some of the hashtags that we have used to collect the tweets. Can we go to the next slide, the last slide, I think? Yeah, these are the keywords for newspaper articles. Um, some basic words, and I must say that an entire group of people was involved in helping us collect these hashtags and collect these keywords. We could so Yogesh and an entire large, huge team was involved in helping us do this. So we took inputs from them and we started collecting newspaper articles around these keywords. So can we just go to the last slide? I just want to end here if I have a minute. So this of course, this digital archive is essentially just mapping the contemporary, and we are really enjoying this process. But we also see it as the starting point for a much larger digital project. So we definitely want to move beyond mapping the contemporary and to think about various ways in which we can sort of push this in different directions. So of course in the long run, we want to create a vast repository of born digital data, providing public access and preliminary analysis. But we also want to build a repository of data that is not born digital. Essentially, data that is collected painstakingly by researchers on the field all the time. All of us have done that. But that data remains available to a very small group of people. So what we are also thinking of doing, of course, is to, or at least on specific themes, to collect non-born digital data and to feature it here and to sort of allow access to several researchers in India and abroad. So I think I'll end there. I hope I haven't overstepped too much.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We are now open for questions. The session is being telecast on Zoom and on YouTube, and you can ask questions on either of the two platforms. While we wait for the first question to come in, I had a question for Yogesh or for Radhika. Maybe both of you can sort of answer depending on, I don't know which one would have a better idea. But Yogesh mentioned in his talk that there's a long history of peasant movements in Punjab and in the Indian subcontinent. And is there something that from what you've put together right now that stands out as being different in this movement as compared to the other movements?
Radhika, can I?
Yes, of course, please.
Okay. So see, I think all movements have been complex movements. because we are also discussing it through the lens of the archiving process, I would say the previous movement have not been archived and understood from the lens other than the class. So this is therefore an opportunity for us who want to archive this particular movement to look at the lens of the movement beyond the lens of the class. And therefore, I underline the usage of the term, not the present, which is, remember, an academic term predominantly used for class as a category, but also thinking of other categories which would be useful to imagine this kind of a project. And therefore, term farmer and kisan become far more acceptable and open-ended terms within the imagination of the archive. So movements have always been complex. What is different in this particular movement in the way in which actually it has emerged as a part of the larger project of building solidarities around the farmers. That definitely has been a very distinctive form of the process, particularly post-independence movements. You know, as I refer to here, the Naxalite movement, say for instance, in Punjab in the 70s, how it transits into what we know as the Khalistani movement, or also sometimes the militancy movement, is a very specifically Punjab-centric debate. But the current moment actually goes beyond that debate. And therefore, how is it that on the question of the Satluj Jamuna link, say for instance, how is it that Punjab and Haryana for farmer movements communicate with each other? That becomes an important moment. So which has been actually a very contentious question around the state politics, both in Punjab and Haryana, becomes very fluid in this particular moment. So this is one of the examples that I can give of in where this particular moment is definitely different from the other moments of the present movements post 1947.
Thank you. Abha Sinha has raised the hand.
Hello, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Hello.
Hi. Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead with your question.
Audible? Yeah, my question is that farmers movement that that has been done. It's a very good initiative to archive all the activities going on by the farmer movement all over the country. One idea came into mind. This is for the Kisan, the backbone of our nation. That all archives are very much useful for future researchers. One thought just now hit my mind that why can't you archive for the people, common people, old pension scheme 1972 that was that has been abolished nowadays. That has been that NPS is all over India. One archive should be prepared for common people that without any caste and creed, all the private and government, maybe the politicians also, they all must get this CCS 1972 old pension scheme and archive the article that common people are in this pandemic facing the monetary problems. Just because they are losing their jobs, their family are not getting family pensions, just because of all these things. This can be also archived in a very nice way to for future researchers to do research on this very topic, to initiate the CCS 1972 old pension scheme in our country. This was the just imagination or thought came into mind, and just I spoke in front of you to archive the articles regarding it also. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. We have also Ananya Deka who's raised her hand.
Hello, am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah. So good evening, everyone. I'm Ananya Deka. I'm a postgraduate student at the Central University of Gujarat. So firstly, I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to both sir and ma'am for this insightful presentation. I would like to know that as you were doing this archival thing in terms of newspaper articles, Instagram post, have you gone through some criteria while selecting the basic metadata elements such as title, description, creator, which you have been using? or any standard is being followed or not.
Thank you. I'll just add to that. We also have a question from Twitter live stream from Shilpi Day, who's asked that what kind of criteria have been employed here to evaluate the credibility of the online resources. So perhaps both the questions can be answered together.
Yeah. Okay. Shall I do this, Yogesh?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So see. I think there are two elements, two parts to this question. As far as tweets are concerned, it's all tweets under a certain hashtag get collected, automated. There isn't very much we can do. Newspaper articles, that is where we had to do a fair amount of cleaning up, and sometimes hilarious cleaning up needs to be done, because you suddenly find, I remember in one iteration when we were looking at the articles that came up, articles that had nothing to do with the farmers movement were cropping up, and we were like, what is the problem? And we had to read through and figure out what word was there in the article which caught the attention of the tool. So and then we had to refine the code. So yes, there is some amount of refining of the basic code that's required. It's gone through multiple iterations. Say I remember one instance in particular, there was the word mandir, and I think it was part of something else, and it was part of the keyword, and and then of course anything connected with mandir was entering the archive, and that was of course a huge problem. So we had to debug the whole thing so that you keep only specific instances, entering the archive and so on. So yes, it's an ongoing process where if you, oh yes, Mandi got us mandir. Yes, so that was it. Thank you, Aniket. You have these odd, funny problems that are very much part of not having humans doing the actual archiving, right? So there's this machine which just figures out what to do. As far as Instagram posts and so on are concerned, again, till now, what we have done is we have picked up users and people who are on the ground archiving the protests, and we are picking up their posts, their photographs, in the hope that most of the photographs are bona fide and there is no problem. And till now, we have not encountered any problems with Instagram. So that's what we are doing to clean up and to sort of make sure. But as and when the archive becomes bigger, I am almost certain that we will have to do a lot more work to make sure that the archive is kept clean and that only relevant data enters the scene. So it's something that we are not particularly worried about, because this kind of cleaning is very much possible. All it needs is a lot of vigilance. You need to keep looking at what is entering, because this is an automated process. You write the code in the evening, and next morning you wake up and you see a whole lot of stuff ready. So you just have to keep an eye and see what is getting generated, and if something strikes your eye as something very odd happening, then you have to figure out why and then clean it up and so on. So it requires a whole lot of vigilance, but we're not particularly worried about it. If that answers your question.
Thank you. We have a question from Ravinder Singh. It's a question for Yogesh. He asks, apart from class and caste, did you also consider including migrant laborer as a category in the farmers' protest? I'm asking this because it seems like this category has simply escaped our gaze. I'm asking this because we know that agriculture in Punjab especially is largely supported by the labor of migrant laborers from UP, Bihar, and some other states.
Thank you, Ravinder, for underlining it. We have a very small component of it, but yes, attention has to be paid into the larger sense of it, how it figures in the farmer movement archive. We did use the term, at least in the keywords, the term that had been suggested as SIRI as a term had definitely been suggested, SIR, either farm labor, sometimes forced labor. That as a term definitely had been proposed. But I think the point is well taken. How do you then think of the migrant labor question within the larger movement? I think it's a very good suggestion. So I take it as a suggestion.
Thank you. There's a question from Meghali Mitra, who asks, with reference to any protest in the current political climate, there is always a larger threat of erasure. Have you faced censorship concerns? If not, then how do you propose to deal with the inevitable wave of censorship that comes towards any such endeavors?
Yes,
Okay.
Radhika, continue.
Yeah, okay. So we have, as of now, we have not faced any problems, but yes, it's a very genuine concern. And what we have in mind is to actually create a mirror of all the data that we have. We don't want to keep it in one place because, as all of us know, there is always the fear of someone cracking down on the archive. So we will be mirroring it outside of the country probably, or in different servers which are hopefully safer.
Thank you.
Yes, just to add actually to what Radhika was saying, Internet Archive is one such platform that we are in touch with, where the entire data can be mirrored. And in fact, just to respond to this basic metadata question also, which came up earlier by Ananya Deka, the Internet Archive also provided us that template of the basic metadata, what can go on into imagining a content. So if you go to the Internet Archive website, you will come to see when you add a particular entry or a particular collection, then you will come across that metadata details.
Thank you. There's a question from Menak. He asks that local news channels, irrespective of the medium, generally capture a lot of information than the internet or national channels. But due to popular opinions, national channels influence the cause a lot. How can such local news channels be involved in the archiving process? And he's taking a cue from the recent post-election violence in West Bengal. I'd also just like to add a second part to it, that one of the other things that often happens, and that has particularly been prevalent in the farmers' protests, is the WhatsApp forwards. Some of them are from social media, but some of them are also independent of that. So maybe you could also answer both of these, local news channels and WhatsApp forwards.
Radhika, can I?
Yes, please.
Okay. See, local news channels, we are definitely attentive to. In fact, the next stage of the process would be to think of, say, for instance, scraping the Punjabi Tribune, which is one of the nuanced voice of the region. So we are very attentive to these processes, and therefore is an important suggestion. This means an important suggestion. Radhika?
Yes, I don't think I really have anything to add there. But yes, see, I just want to say this about WhatsApp. We are very, very, at least I personally am not very happy with getting into WhatsApp, given the, the privacy concerns and so on and so forth. So which is why we have deliberately kept away from WhatsApp as a platform when it comes to, collecting information and so on. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. There's a question from Kulsum who asks, what steps have you taken with regard to reversing the gaze and breaking that panopticon? Also, how do you manage to see content objectively? Is being objective necessary when we create an archive?
Yes, I'll answer the, Yogesh, shall I begin here?
Yes, definitely.
So I'll begin with the second half of the question. Is it necessary to be objective? I'd say a resounding yes. So the way we look at this archive is, if it is actually to meet the demands of a good researcher now and in, say, 10, 15 years down the line, it has to be kind of ideologically neutral. We have to be able to collect all sorts of voices that are emerging around the movement. So we have tried to do that, as you saw in the list of hashtags that the list of hashtags that we collected. We specifically tried to collect hashtags that were both in favor of the farmers movement and against, and so on, because that's the job of a good researcher. We need to know what is happening around the movement, not just something that reflects one side of the debate or the other. Now, coming back to reversing the gaze, now this is an idea that all of us are just working with, and I guess it requires a whole lot of thinking through. And what we have in mind is, as I said, to build this into a larger archive, which is not just mapping the contemporary, but which is doing a whole lot of other things. And our idea of reversing the gaze was essentially using publicly available information and putting out the results in the public domain in a very transparent fashion. So that was the essential idea. So once, for example, the tweets are collected, I would probably feel that, the preliminary analysis that comes out of it will also be part of the same website, and people would be able to figure out what is happening on Twitter. We would provide them free access to our analysis, whether it's an article, whether it's in the form of a graph, whether it's in the form of, anything that is easily understandable by everyone. So that's the idea, to sort of make this digital world a little more open to everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can you just one thing that I would want to add
Yes.
here? So digital also is just one component, but a major component of what is being done here, because it is auto-generated. So it brings and consumes a lot of data in the process. But this is one component of the process of building this archive. The other component of building this archive is to look out for and collection. Therefore, what Radhika referred to as contributing data, which is not auto-generated, therefore, where individuals can come, organizations come and contribute data to the generation of the archive, is yet another process, along with the collection of, remember, material from organizations who may not actually put their content entirely on the websites or elsewhere. So therefore, All India Kisan Sangharsh Committee, their data, say for instance, might become a crucial point of future concern. Actually, these are all there in the back of our mind, but since it's an ongoing movement, remember, it becomes difficult for such a data to come in at this particular stage. But at some stage, this data definitely has to come in, and we will try to reach out to these organizations and individuals for that particular data at a later stage.
I think it's a related question which Chandan Pandey had asked, that do you have plans for collecting oral records of farmers directly engaged in this movement, or do you want to already documented things? So,
right.
Narendran Nair had raised his hand. Is he still?
My question was answered. Thank you.
Sorry?
Says his question was answered.
Oh, okay. Then we can, I think Murali Ramanath has also raised his hand.
Hello? Am
Yes.
I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Basically, I just saw the website of the IIIT with all the Twitter handles. It's a very wonderful job they have done. Real compliments for storing this archive. So my question is, what if Twitter is banned tomorrow?
Radhika, this is for you.
Okay. Well, are you talking about the data that's already come in, or data that is, of course, if Twitter is banned, we're not going to have any more tweets coming in and we'll have to stop the crawling process. But as far as the stuff that's already there, it's there. I don't think anything can happen with that. Yeah.
No, my question is the process of archival currently. Okay. What I feel is, now let's say you are taking a link to one Twitter, correct? One Twitter link, Twitter /ID/something, correct?
Yes.
So that is what is archived. My question is, if I am not able to access that link tomorrow because of ban of this domain twitter.com, right? Or let's say even Twitter as a company goes down, right? How do we kind of maintain a replica of this archival so that there is something like what we do in a computer hardware backup feed, So is there a process so that this work doesn't go like because of missing links? Let's say Google Photos. I have some links I sent for Google Photos. Google Photos got removed. Okay, so I was searching for some of the archival photos I had done, and I am not able to access it. So my question is, how do we ensure this work is timeless, not dependent on Twitter as an organization, or the links as a timeless? How do we make it timeless is my question. Archival is already about time, no? We want to register time. But in the process of our work, if we come up with a framework design, which is itself due to by design, it's become time bound. I think we are losing the purpose of archival itself is what my concern is.
Okay. I think that's a great question, and frankly, I don't want to answer authoritatively on that one. I guess our more technically competent students will have to figure this out. But as far as I know, it is possible to kind of save the sort of image and the content of the tweet, and we can work towards that. But as I said, I don't want to answer something authoritatively on something that I don't really know too much about. So
no, I just remember from the conversation, if Radhika, you allow me, is that there are two components of this process. Aniket is also here, maybe he can correct us. One process is indexing. Indexing involves that you use the links of articles, say for instance, which are there on the internet. But the other process is scraping. Now, scraping involves some bit of retaining of the data also. So, and also for, say, for instance, data which has been deleted, say, for instance, the tweet has been deleted. In fact, our early conversation had been on such tweets which get deleted in the process by Twitter or otherwise. What do we lose them in the process? So we don't actually lose them in the process, because even if they are not visible, Radhika, please correct me if I'm wrong, even if they are not visible to the public at large, they will still remain in the internet space.
no, that is there, Yogesh. There's no problem with that. See, if a particular tweet gets deleted, we of course still have access to it. I think what he's saying is, if there is no Twitter.com, right? If we don't have the the essential architecture, then what happens? That is, I think, what he is getting at.
No, I'm getting it.
I think, let me summarize. See, we are basically archiving. The purpose of archival is to go back in time and say, okay, this is what happened then, and how do we derive some amount of information, knowledge, wisdom, truth, whatever, to understand the kind of things, whatever happened. It's a war archival, all those things, right? So my concern is, when we are coming up with this archival architecture itself, one of the prime.
Hi, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry, but we are over our time, so we need to wrap up this session.
Okay.
But maybe you can continue the conversation separately with both the panelists.
Sure.
We are already over time, and I think the next session will be starting soon. The next session is on archives and research, and it will start in another 15 minutes at 6 p.m. So do join in for that also. And thank you so much, Radhika and Yogesh. We still have a lot of questions. I think, again, we'll send them across to you separately, and you could perhaps reply to the people who asked them. But
Thanks, Radhika. I will catch up with you.
If the two of you could share your emails in the chat, that would be great.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah.
Thank you, Ganeev.